How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brian Logan, and today we got to talk about Mark Zuckerberg speaking before Congress. He was asked a few questions, he gave a little speech, and then it was more of a direct Q&A after the initial questions, his little speech. You know, it was a Q&A section after that. To be perfectly honest with you, there was not a lot here. I watched about 2 hours before I decided I was done. I think I pretty much saw all I needed to see. The questions began to become repetitive. He began to repeat himself. And I looked at the list of people that were going to be there. If you look on C-SPAN, they have everybody that's supposed to be in the video listed on the side or on the bottom of the video. And pretty much everybody that was a heavy hitter, like Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, who did well. We'll see his video in just a moment. They all went and asked their questions. I think Kamala Harris was the only one left. That might have been kind of interesting because of the element she brings. But at the end of the day, she does not ask very tough questions either. So there was not a lot that you're going to miss if you only saw the first 2 hours. However, Ted Cruz did have some good questions, and we'll get to his video in just a moment. But before we get to that, I just want to talk about what actually transpired before Ted came on and asked his questions. Like I said, it wasn't a lot here, but there were some interesting questions. He was asked about the privacy of the network. He was asked about why he keeps apologizing, why he keeps messing up, why there's constant mistakes, what's really going on with that. A lot of people kept cutting him off because he began to go into his prefab lines because it was obvious that he had been coached, and he had a bunch of lines that he will refer back to when he was not really able to answer a question directly. People were able to see through that. He was using a little bit of lawyer speak, talking about generally, I'm not aware, those kind of things. That's almost the equivalent of I do not recall, when you just don't want to answer a question truthfully. A lot of that was being said. And also a note, he was not under oath in this little talk. And a lot of the people that were there allegedly took money from Facebook or gave money to Facebook. It might have been a little bit of quid pro quo going on. I don't know. I'm just saying that's what's been reported as far as the money exchange. As far as the quid pro quo part, I can't really comment on that to be 100% true or false. As far as them being able to get paid off to go easy on them. People didn't really go too hard on them. I felt like everybody was rushed. They had limited time to speak, but at the same time, I'm sitting here for like 2 hours and it wasn't even over. So I'm not really sure how that works, but I digress. Ted Cruz had the best set of questions that was presented. However, there was one part where I kind of criticized him. He did not let Zuckerberg answer a very important question. But before I get into what Ted Cruz said, what I want to do right now is go ahead and play it for you. After you get done watching that, stick around. I'll talk about that video and then wrap it on up with a nice bow on top. So without further ado, let's go ahead and roll it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Zuckerberg, welcome. Thank you for being here. Mr. Zuckerberg, does Facebook consider itself a neutral public forum?
Senator, we consider ourselves to be a platform for all ideas.
Let me ask the question again. Does Facebook consider itself to be a neutral public forum? And representatives of your company have given conflicting answers on this. Are you a First Amendment speaker expressing your views, or are you a neutral public forum allowing everyone to speak?
Senator, here's how we think about this. I don't believe that there is certain content that clearly we do not allow, right? Hate speech, terrorist content, nudity, anything that makes people feel unsafe in the community. From that perspective, that's why we generally try to refer to what we do as a platform for all ideas.
Let me try, just because the time is constrained. It's just a simple question. The predicate for Section 230 immunity under the CDA is that you are a neutral public forum. Do you consider yourself a neutral public forum, or are you engaged in political speech, which is your right under the First Amendment?
Well, Senator, our goal is certainly not to engage in political speech. I'm not that familiar with the specific legal language of the law that you speak to, so I would need to follow up with you on that. I'm just trying to lay out how broadly I think about this.
Well, Mr. Zuckerberg, I will say there are a great many Americans who I think are deeply concerned that Facebook and other tech companies are engaged in a pervasive pattern of bias and political censorship. There have been numerous instances with Facebook. In May of 2016, Gizmodo reported that Facebook had purposely and routinely suppressed conservative stories from trending news, including stories about CPAC, including stories about Mitt Romney, including stories about the Lois Lerner IRS scandal, including stories about Glenn Beck. In addition to that, Facebook has initially shut down the Chick-fil-A Appreciation Day page, has blocked a post of a Fox News reporter, has blocked over 24 Catholic pages, and most recently blocked Trump supporters Diamond and Silk's page with 1.2 million Facebook followers after determining their content and brand were, quote, unsafe to the community. To a great many Americans, that appears to be a pervasive pattern of political bias. Do you agree with that assessment?
Senator, let me say a few things about this. First, I understand where that concern is coming from because Facebook and the tech industry are located in Silicon Valley, which is an extremely left-leaning place. And this is actually a concern that I have and that I try to root out at the company, is making sure that we don't have any bias in the work that we do. And I think it is a fair concern that that people would at least wonder about.
Let me ask this question. Are you aware of any ad or page that has been taken down from Planned Parenthood?
Senator, I'm not, but let me just...
How about MoveOn.org?
Sorry?
How about MoveOn.org?
I'm not specifically aware of those.
How about any Democratic candidate for office?
I'm not specifically aware. I mean, I'm not sure.
In your testimony, you say that you have 15,000 to 20,000 people working on security and content review. Do you know the political orientation of those 15,000 to 20,000 people engaged in content review?
No, Senator. We do not generally ask people about their political orientation when they're joining the company.
So as CEO, have you ever made hiring or firing decisions based on political positions or what candidates they supported?
No.
Why was Palmer Luckey fired?
That is a specific personnel matter that seems like it would be inappropriate to speak to here.
You just made a specific representation that you didn't make decisions based on political views.
Well,
Is that accurate?
I can commit that it was not because of a political view.
Do you know of those 15,000 to 20,000 people engaged in content review, how many, if any, have ever supported financially a Republican candidate for office?
Senator, I do not know that.
Your testimony says it is not enough that we just connect people. We have to make sure those connections are positive. It says we have to make sure people aren't using their voice to hurt people or spread misinformation. We have a responsibility not just to build tools, to make sure those tools are used for good. Mr. Zuckerberg, do you feel it's your responsibility to assess users whether they are good and positive connections or ones that those 15,000 to 20,000 people deem unacceptable or deplorable?
Senator, you're asking about me personally?
Facebook.
Senator, I think that there are a number of things that we would all agree are clearly bad. Foreign interference in our elections, terrorism, self-harm.
I'm
Those
talking
are
about
things.
Censorship.
Well, I think that you would probably agree that we should remove terrorist propaganda from the service. So that, I agree, I think is clearly bad activity that we want to get down, and we're generally proud of how well we do at that. Now, what I can say, and I do want to get this in before the end here, is that I am very committed to making sure that Facebook is a platform for all ideas. That is a very important founding principle of what we do. We're proud of the discourse and the different ideas that people can share on the service. And that is something that, as long as I'm running the company, I'm going to be committed to making sure is the case.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cruz.
Okay, so you see that. You see what's happening there. Now, like I said, these were the best questions of the actual little talk here of the afternoon. He asked directly about the censorship and about liberal versus conservative. And if you know, like I know, there was one part of this where I wish Ted Cruz would have just let Zuckerberg talk, because he began to go into his prefab lines, Zuckerberg that is, but at the tail end of it, he was getting ready to answer the question, or at least shed some more light on why you have all these people from the right that are being censored. He got into the whole thing about, well, we live in the Silicon Valley. It's a very left-leaning area. I want to try to root that out, this, that, and the third. However, I think that when you have a very public controversy going on with the constant conservative censoring, there'll be more of a concerted effort to root that out. And then he says he doesn't really know the political affiliation of those who he hires. Well, how can you really know that you have a diverse workplace if you don't know their political affiliation? That's why you have stuff like affirmative action. You have Facebook and other tech media giants out there doing diversity outreach and stuff like that. Why are you doing that? Okay. At a certain point, you know who you work with. You know who your employees are. You know that you only have like 1% black folks or whatever. So you know that you have to do things in order to not have that happen anymore. And you're doing proactive things. The question I would have asked is, what are you doing to make sure you have more of a diverse group of people politically and socially in your workplace that are making decisions to block people because of their political views? There is no reason why Diamond and Silk should be labeled as unsafe to the community. And I'm glad Ted Cruz brought that up. And then he's talking about Catholic pages. And then he also brought up the whole thing about Planned Parenthood not being shut down. So it's obvious there's some political stuff going on. I wish Ted Cruz would have allowed him to go further into it. Maybe somebody's going to ask him that question towards the end of the talk, because like I said, I watched 2 hours of it. I was done. But as of right now, when I'm talking, probably about almost 45 minutes later, it's still going on. But I doubt it. Like I said, Dog and Pony show, although Ted Cruz has some very good questions, hopefully if Mark Zuckerberg does not address the political issue, it'll get brought up again because it was brought up here. That's the first step, at least. Like I said, I wish he would have went further with it and demanded an answer. However, he didn't. But I'm satisfied with what he asked. I like the direction he went in because nobody really went there until he did it. People were trying to like beat around the bush. They were talking about stuff like data and kids being able to access the platform and all this and that. But it didn't really ask the elephant in the room, which was about the conservative censorship. So that's pretty much all I got for that. Like I said, if you want to see the whole thing, look in the box below. You might as well just go to the featured clips because C-SPAN has that. Go to featured clips and go to other news platforms. I may post like a summary of something like that from a Breitbart, Fox News, somewhere that's more right-leaning, because if you get a left-leaning site, they may not really be too accurate. However, I will place those in the box as well, because I like to have all points of view. You can look at everything and then make your mind up. So whatever your comments are, please let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.